With its 1.5 kilometre strip of sand and surf, Sydney's Bondi is one of the world's most famous beaches. And as Environment Minister Peter Garrett says, you can't get more Aussie than Bondi. Now, an old shoebox of photographs has shed fascinating new light on a long-lost aspect of Australian beach culture in the 30s. Rebecca Bailey reports.
Framed by stately pines, silent guardians of a multitude of cars, conveyances of the sun-loving sons and daughters of Australia, we get our first glimpse of beautiful Bondi.
It's the most famous stretch of sand in Australia. Dubbed the playground of the Pacific, in the 1930s, Bondi Beach attracted 15 million visitors every year.
Leaving the cares of office and factory behind, these people revel in playgrounds of unrivaled beauty.
It's iconic. It's one of the first beaches that people in the history of Sydney actually frequented. It was easy to get to, trams ran to it. It has the whole history of beach culture and rolling.
This pageant brings us a parade of virile manhood.
With Bondi Surf Club established more than 100 years ago, the beach's surf lifesaving tradition is well known.
Sturdy young men who devote their leisure hours to the splendid task of making the beaches safe, alert and brave.
But one slice of unknown Bondi culture could have been lost to history if it weren't for the discovery of hundreds of photographic negatives which had lain forgotten for decades in a shoebox.
And lo and behold, extraordinary, stunning. I didn't know I'd been holding on to such fabulous photographs. And I thought to myself, people have got to see these, I've got to share these.
Paul Caddy, son of the photographer George Caddy, found the box of photos soon after his father died. Years later, he got in touch with the New South Wales State Library to reveal what he'd found.
We see many collections that have been stored in shoeboxes, but most of them simply aren't this interesting. Something of our beach culture which we'd never seen before. When I saw these images, my jaw dropped to the ground. They were great.
The photos document the life and times of Bondi Beach between 1936 and 1941. They showcase the long-lost art of beach acrobatics, which was popular at the time, but disappeared after the Second World War.
Beach acrobatics is gymnasts or acrobats forming large pyramids in complex ways. And what was interesting, just wasn't men, it was women. And they were wearing modern costumes, and some of the shots are actually making fun at the camera of what they're doing. It was very entertaining.
What a picture they make. Colourful costumes, gay umbrellas and wigwams. Or, to give them their real Australian name, mai-mais.
The pre-war period was a time of great change at Bondi, particularly in fashion. George Caddy captured it all.
For the men, of course, it was away with sort of Eric Spooner's dreadful costumes covering the chest and little modesty flaps at the front. For the women, suddenly it was two-piece costumes, the brassiere-style costume, and also the Canadian costume, a lace-up version which was quite daring.
Carefree and happy. Everywhere one can see these splendid types of Australian girlhood.
In those days, people worked 5 days a week. Sunday, they headed to the beach. And the photographs show people parading on Bondi Promenade, the cement part, in suits, in formal wear, as if they'd just come from church. There was a lot going on Bondi Beach in the 30s.
While the photos reveal much about Bondi Beach, little was known about the photographer George Caddy.
Zero. We knew nothing about him whatsoever. I asked all my colleagues. No one had ever heard of him. So we had to start from scratch.
What was obvious, though, was a similarity to the work of the celebrated Australian photographer Max Dupain.
Everyone knows that probably the most famous Australian photograph is the Sunbaker 1937. The same year, in February 1937, George took a photograph almost the same, except there's a man standing on top of the Sunbaker. There's several photographs, so if we could just sign the name on the bottom, yes, people would think it was precisely the same person.
Now living in Tasmania, Paul Caddy has returned to Bondi where he grew up. and has encountered some modern beach culture.
Oh, terrific shot! That is great!
The process of uncovering the secret treasure in the shoebox has taught Paul Caddy much about his father's life before the war.
I grew up in a background of photography, chemicals, enlargers, and I was George's subject, of course, when I was young. So I was familiar with his photography. I knew he loved dancing, but I didn't know he was a champion jitterbug dancer.
He's written up in 2 newspapers as a leading Australian jitterbug dancer, and we have several photographs of him. We found footage of him. It's interesting to see George in action on the dance floor.
The negatives in the shoebox are now the focus of an exhibition at the New South Wales State Library. For Paul Caddy, it's a fitting tribute to his father, who was an amateur photographer with a professional eye for the joys of life.
He shot from what he felt, and to see him recognised in this way, I'm really pleased. I'm pleased that people can see this.
And so ends another day of delight in the playground of the Pacific.
Fantastic slice of early life on the beach in Australia. Rebecca Bailey with that report. Time